And to discuss this further, joining me now is Ahmet Kasis Han, a professor at the Department of International Relations at Altinbas University in Istanbul, and Yury Barmin, an analyst at the Russian International Affairs Council, who focuses on the country's Middle East policy. Thank you both for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yury, let me start with you. What were the main points of agreement between Turkey and Russia at the meeting between Erdogan and Putin?
It's actually very hard to come up with a kind of a set, list of agreements. I think that the two leaders definitely agreed on Idlib and on the need to fight terrorism in Idlib. On the issue of constitutional committee, there's clearly some agreement, but on the issue of the Syria's northeast, I think there's still a lot of disagreement going on.
And Ahmet, last year President Erdogan met with Putin almost more than any other world leader. Why has Russia become such a vital partner for Turkey?
Yeah, well, after especially the coup in 2016, the coup attempt, which caused a lot of agony in Turkey and a lot of misfit between Turkey and its Western partners, Russia was always emerged as a very, if I can, empathetic listener and supporter of the Turkish thesis on both the coup attempt and on its concerns in Syria, especially after the parties made amend in May 2016, right before the coup attempt. This has been the case. And to be honest, Syria is one of the biggest problems, the most critical problem of Turkey. It involves elements that are called as at the level of importance that pertains to Turkey's survival by Turkish leaders. And in that area, in Syria, Russia basically is the party that calls the shots. It can open and close the airspace. It has presence on the ground. It creates facts on the ground that are very hard for the other parties to break or transform. That is why Turkey finds it critically important to cooperate with Russia, and especially in times that we are experiencing all those hardships in Turkey's relations with the West, as I have mentioned before. Russia emerges as a balancing act.
Yury, Russia and Turkey at times have been supporting opposite sides in the war in Syria. Despite this, can you explain how the two leaders have been able to forge a strategic partnership?
On this, I agree with my colleague that Russia has managed to create facts on the ground that nobody can ignore, that it is acting as a balancing act for Turkey. So obviously, both countries see value in forging that strategic partnership. For Russia, Turkey is important not only in Syria, but also in Europe as well, with the kind of Turkey being the main element of Russia's energy equation in Europe as well. For Turkey, obviously, Russia is a very convenient partner when Turkey wants to build a more balanced relationship with the West. So it looks like they've been inching towards this cooperation and partnership for a very long time, and they finally come to realize that they need each other to achieve not only cooperation between them, but also gain valuable assets with partners beyond this region.
And Ahmet, the standoff in Idlib is still very much on both leaders' minds. What sort of progress have we seen on that front?
Well, there's clearly an agreement on fighting with HTS, which has gained a lot of ground in Idlib in the recent weeks. And that falls under the title of terrorism, fighting with terrorism for both parties. Turkey obviously doesn't want to experience an influx of additional refugees from Idlib, which is what is going to exactly happen if Russia and the Assad regime starts a military operation in a manner uncoordinated with Turkey in Idlib. So Turkey definitely wants to coordinate with Russia on that, because it cannot directly coordinate with the Assad regime. Russia seems to be the proper interlocutor that is also able to deliver. However, as to how this is going to be achieved, I think we have to wait and see what the practical outcome of all those talks would be in Idlib. And for that, I think we have to look at late spring.
Well, the future of Bashar Al Assad came up during the meeting. How stark are the differences between Erdogan and Putin on his future?
I think this is one of the things where they cannot reconcile their positions. I think Russia's red line is that he is staying in power until the next presidential election. Turkey's position on that, and in fact, the position of many countries around Syria has been changing continuously. I think Turkey's position has not changed a bit either. But at the end of the day, Ankara will have to accept that as long as Russia backs Bashar Al Assad as the president of Syria, he is there to stay. However, the next presidential elections that are taking place in 2021, a lot could happen by then, obviously. And I think this is maybe next year is where we're going to see a lot of new personalities emerging in Syria now that Syria is kind of moving into a different period of its development. And there's been a lot of talk, actually, that Russia is looking for alternative personalities to replace Bashar al-Assad. All this talk, there's been a lot of rumors, but none of that has materialized so far.
Ahmet, talk to us a little bit more about Turkey's position on Assad. We heard Erdogan say that it's crucial not to allow a power vacuum in Syria after the withdrawal of U.S. troops. And what did he mean exactly by that?
Well, what he means is reflective of what Turkey's concerns are, which is to say if the Americans leave immediately, which is something that Putin also has underlined, there will be a power vacuum in those areas that the Americans are holding under control with YPG-PKK forces. And that is going to create an area where basically ISIS might go back into, and B, in the power vacuum that occurs, probably in the back of the president's mind, the Turkish president's mind, the regimes creeping into those areas is also a problem, which I don't think that the Russians would see as constituting an issue. And C, he also doesn't want to see that YPG-PKK forces are controlling large swaths of the area, leading them to be able to have an exchange with the regime in terms of opportunities to build cooperation. And those are all stuff that would dent Turkey's interests one way or the other, even though they are entirely different scenarios at times, which would create entirely different realities on the ground.
Yury, President Putin has stated many reasons why coordination and shared interest between the two countries is imperative. But is there anything that can come between them, like American or Israeli interests in Syria?
The first thing is obviously the Americans, and it's clear that the Americans are looking for ways to build a stronger relationship with Ankara, especially against the backdrop of President Erdogan promising to buy, and actually already committing to buy the S-400 air defense systems from Russia. So obviously this is a very kind of alarming signal to the Americans. America will be the first country to do that. I think there's a lot of kind of movement now in the Arab world to come back to Syria and to start talking to the Assad government. So that down the line, that could also possibly put some constraints on the Russia-Turkey relationship.
And what is crucial for Turkey in the outcome of Astana framework at the next meeting with Iran?
Well, definitely Turkey wants to reach to a final end state in Syria where Bashar Al Assad is not present. And frankly speaking, from where I look at it, I have been for a very long time commenting on the fact that the Russians would get rid of Assad at one juncture or another down the road. And I think that time is coming. So for the Russian party, that is not a problem. But for the Iranians, Assad might be actually a more critical issue. They would like him to stay. At least they would like to control the transfer of power in Damascus, which is a contentious point between Russia and Iran too. So in that, Turkey will be probably siding with Russia and try to convince Iran on the outcome. The other issue, which is still very important, is Idlib, of course, because that is not going away. Obviously, Idlib will continue to be the thorn on the side of those relations and a thorn on the side of Turkey, to be honest, especially up until March when Turkey will be experiencing a domestic election. And the other very critical issue will still be the east of Euphrates
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you both for coming in today, Ahmet Han and Yury Barmin.
Thank you.